25% of players are stuck in Diamond, and they will never reach Masters, let alone Apex Predator. So let's change that. Today, I'm going to give you 10 game-changing tips that I used when I hit top 20 Apex Predator that are guaranteed to help you instantly get better at Apex. And by the end of this video, you will be more educated on what actually matters when it comes to ranking up consistently, making your own rank journey feel a little bit more effortless. Now, to be clear, this is not going to be a step-by-step how-to ranked guide. This is simply a consistency guide, because the more consistent that you can be at these 10 skills, the more consistent that you will notice your rank journey becomes. The number one thing that my coaching clients tell me when they book a session with me is because one day they feel like they are killing absolutely everything, and the next day they are getting smoked by absolutely everyone. But why? The number one reason is consistency. So let's fix that with tip number one. Top 5 streaks. Lots of people don't know this, but top 5 streaks are a massively important step to being able to gain consistent RP, especially in higher ranks where the entry cost is more and will completely evaporate your RP. Every game that you reach top 5, you activate a top 5 streak bonus. Your first top 5, you'll get an extra 10 RP bonus. Your second top 5 match in a row, you'll earn an extra 20 RP bonus. Your third game earns you an extra 30 RP bonus, so on and so forth until you max out at 5 top 5s in a row, earning you an extra 50 RP per game. And from now on, every time that you hit top 5, you'll earn that extra 50 RP as long as you keep your streak. This means if you simply prioritize your placement, you will instantly gain an extra 50 RP every game for basically doing nothing, helping you consistently gain more and more RP. A good win in Apex is around anywhere from 250 to 350 RP. But if you get that top 5 streak bonus extra 50 RP, you're now looking at 400 RP games. And a couple of those add up insanely quickly. So how do you actually take advantage of this and reach top 5 consistently? It's simple. Just think before you act. Whenever I'm playing, I'm always asking myself, why am I about to or am doing the thing that I'm doing? What's the reason for it? If I'm about to take a fight, why? Is it because I need the loot that will help me get the top 5? Is it because I need their position for top 5? Is it because I'm rotating this way to avoid or to take a fight? Is this simply going to help me with my top 5 goal? The amount of times I'm coaching someone in ranked and they are just pointlessly taking fights or doing something for no reason, or shooting at someone across the map, or holding a position in the middle of the map with no idea why is so outrageous. If you can't simply answer to yourself why you're doing something and what purpose does it serve, you probably shouldn't be doing it, especially if it doesn't contribute to reaching that top 5 streak. Which brings us to our second tip that will help you get to that top 5 position. Tip number 2, your zone play style. The number one mistake I see in rank is people having one singular play style. I hear all the time, I'm a slow player, or I only like to play zone, or I like to play really aggressive. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a preference as to how you play. But just because that's how you like to play, it doesn't mean that it's the right way to play. That's because depending on what round it is, people will need to make certain things happen, and this is guaranteed. If you aren't playing for what people need to do, your play style isn't going to match up with what you will need to do. These are the 3 different play styles that you will need to adapt to throughout your match. Number 1, the early games from drop to round number 2. In the early game, the map is still very large, and you will have almost no idea where the game is going to be ending, even with a ring console. So playing for a position in the early game just doesn't really make any sense, because nobody is trying to take that position because it has no value to them yet, which means you're going to need to put your efforts elsewhere. You need to put your focus into getting loot, because when the mid game rolls around and people are actually forced to make rotations from the zone, running into other teams, getting held out, or pushed from teams coming in, you will need loot in order to fight optimally. So your early game is simply a setup for your mid and your end game. So you need to ask yourself, how are you going to get the amps, attachments, evo, and the weapons that you need to have a successful mid and end game fights? Truth is, I don't care how you do it, as long as you get it. When I drop in, I have 2 to 3 different ways that I get my loot. First is, if I notice on the map a team didn't drop into the POI that is next to me, I'll drop halfway into my own POI, loot half of it, and loot moving towards that empty area so that I can beat other teams to it, giving me and my team so so much more potential loot, more Evo caches, more weapon arsenals to grab, and more crafting opportunities before we actually go and take our first fight. The second thing that I might do is, if I notice two teams spawn close to each other, I can assume they will probably fight. So I'll quickly loot and prioritize getting to that third party in time. This will set me up to get all of the loot that they collected for me, plus it will also help me level up my Evo and give me the chance to pick over the scraps that they left from the replicators, weapon arsenals, or whatever they just left around the POIs. The third thing that I might do off drop is, soon after I land, the first ring will show itself, and this means that some teams will have to do something, like rotate. Teams outside of the ring will need to rotate to it. So I like to play off this and either rat them as they're forced to come towards me, or I will try to catch them as they're forced to rotate through the open. And again, this is how I spend my first 2 rounds in the early game to focus on my loot. But now it's the mid game from round 3 to 4, which means teams have new goals and priorities, which also means that you need to change your goals and priorities. At this point, you have a decent idea as to where the game is likely to end, and having a strong position is absolutely key. That's how you're going to be able to consistently win. So my mid game is almost purely focused on my end game positioning. I want to be on the safer side of the map, and I want a spot that can easily control how other teams can play against me. But what is the safe side of the map? There are 2 key sides, a slow and a fast side to the zone. The slow side is typically the safest side on the map. First, the fast side is typically the side with the most forced interaction amongst teams. Slow side is the area where there is the least amount of closing of the zone. And because this zone doesn't have to close as far, the ring will actually move significantly slower. Versus the fast side, this is the area where there is most of the closing zone. Because the zone has to travel further to close, it moves faster. But why is this so important? Slower closing zones are smaller, which means that there are less teams that will need to rotate, and the ring will also move a lot slower. So if you do end up needing to take a fight, you're less likely to get ran up on from behind by other teams rotating, and since the zone is moving slower, you'll have more time to stay in one single spot without the ring catching up to you and forcing you to move. This is especially important in high rounds where the storm damage does insane damage. Versus the fast side of zone, since the zone that's closing is larger, more teams will need to move with you, meaning more potential to get thirded, and because the zones are closing faster, you'll have less time to stay in one spot before that ring catches up to you and will actually get ahead of you. All while, keep in mind, you're fighting other teams trying to do the same thing as you. So my only focus is doing things that revolve around rotating. If I need to take a fight for the rotation, I will, but I'm not going to go out of my way to take a fight for no reason. My only priority is I want to get to that slow side so that come the end game, when things are actually getting more intense, I'll have a lot more room to work with. And now it's the end game, you're going to have to change your playstyle one more time, because everybody else is now also changing their playstyle based off of how small the map is, how everyone is already set up in a position instead of moving around for it. Now that we're in rounds from 4 to 6, and your back is against the slow side, you'll have a lot less risk of getting ran up on. And now everybody needs to rotate in front of you instead of all around you. This makes it insanely easy to just catch teams rotating in the open, picking off players naturally and safely, giving you safe, easy, and consistent endgames for those top 5s and wins. Which is going to lead us into our third tip, which will actually help you take the fights that you need to take properly. Rotational awareness. This is a simple thing, and I'm sure a lot of people do this, but are you always doing it? Looking at your map and noting what POIs are out of zone, then note what areas are in zone, and drawing a mental line between the two so that you have an idea of where teams likely are and where they're likely to rotate to when the time comes. When I consistently do this throughout my games, I'm almost never 100% correct, but I do find myself being a lot more aware and, more importantly, ready for what a very likely scenario is to come. Versus the games that I'm just running around and never really opening up my map, I feel like I'm constantly getting ran up on, either during my third parties or I'm getting caught off guard while I'm rotating from one spot to the next. Simply knowing, or at the very least having an idea of what is likely an outcome, is a huge skill and an advantage that will help you consistently place higher throughout your matches. And a side note, I say this all the time, but being good at Apex doesn't just mean that you can come up with good or insanely crazy plays. It usually, though, just means that you are really good at constantly using basic and fundamental skills throughout your match. So if you can work on this basic skill, I can promise you, you will always be more prepared for those third parties, or even being ready to rotate into teams during your early and your mid-game rotations. Remember, it's the consistency and the little things that really make and break your games. But what if you just don't understand this aspect of Apex? What would actually make people want to play a certain way? And how do you identify this? Lucky for you, I have one-on-one and a variety of other coaching options. From 1v1 sessions to work on your mechanics, to actual rank sessions where I'll play with you and guide you throughout the match. Or even my weekly group classes where all you need to do is show up, or not, and just submit your clips. I'll review them and break them down with where you went wrong, how you could have played better, or how or where you need to focus on practicing. For coaching starting at as little as $7.50, I will get you right and help you where you need it the most. Just check the link in the description down below and book a session with me today. This brings us into tip number 4, your legend. If you want consistent games, you need to have a consistent way to play, which means picking 2 to 3 legends and sticking with them for that day or for that gaming session. When you constantly change your legend, you force yourself to change how you can and can't play, which means you need to adjust and warm up your decision making with the new legend over and over and over again. Think of it like this. If you're maining Wraith, you can easily phase in and out of your fights, right? So you develop the habit of putting yourself into typically really risky fights, knowing that you can just leave whenever you want. You built the mindset of being aggressive in this one specific way. But if you were to switch over to Pathfinder, even though you can still position around fairly easily, it's not as safe. So you need to make a very small adjustment to when and how you choose to position in or out of those exact same types of fights. Then you choose to switch on over to Horizon, who can still position, maybe not nearly as easy as Pathfinder or Wraith, but still, you now need to change your mindset once more, and your playstyle and your strategies need to be adjusted all over again. An even more drastic example is going from an aggressive playmaking legend like Wraith or Bangalore, who's capable of setting the team up for a push, but then you switch to a legend like Lifeline, who can't really do anything other than stay where she is and support her teammates from where she is. Switching your brain constantly from I have to make plays and be aggressive to I need to be more passive and pay more attention to my teammates now instead of myself is very difficult, and it takes most players multiple games to build a rhythm, momentum, and warm up their decision-making abilities. Just like how you would warm up your aim. It usually takes you a couple minutes or a couple games to get the recoil down with specific weapons, or to get your tracking and your hands warmed up. So constantly switching means that you have to constantly re-warm up how you plan on attacking certain fights and playing certain scenarios, depending on what legend that you're constantly switching to. So pick 1 to 2, maybe 3 similar legends, just in case someone steals your legend if you're solo queuing, and try to stick with that person throughout your gaming session. Tip number 5 is who should you play? Because having a good legend composition is key to having good, consistent games, especially if you want to be reaching top 5 consistently. Now, ideally, you are going to be playing with the squad, but what if you're a solo? This tip will cover both scenarios. For a group who's consistently playing together, or if you're just LFGing in my or the Battlecore Discord server, and you happen to find a group to play with for the day, you'll need to have 3 types of legends: a setter upper, a follow througher, and a recoverer. I don't know. The setter upper is the main player who the team depends on the most for setting them up in order to make plays. This person's legend is typically good at forcing enemies to become passive and disengaged, letting you move up or away safely on your own terms. So assault legends like Fuse, Bangalore, Mad Maggie, Ballistic are all great at being able to control a team's ability to put pressure on you in your current position or as you move around. A good example of this is you need to push a team, but they are putting so much pressure on you that you simply can't push them without dying. So maybe your Bang smokes them off, or your Fuse uses his ultimate to push the team back into their building to where they can't focus you. Now you're set up to push forwards or move away from them. Maybe your Mad Maggie drills or ults the room that a team is holding, and the stun from the ult sets you up to be able to full swing in while minimizing how much damage you'll risk taking, since people can't fight back easily while stunned. You're setting yourself up to do what you want to do safely. A follow througher is a legend that is good at following through with what your previous player set you up to do, typically in the form of moving your team around physically, or at the very least moving themselves around personally and following through with what was set up. So typically skirmish legends are best at this as their kits are based around positioning, but other legends or classes can still be good at this type of playstyle. An example of following through is we just got a knock, a break, or at the very least we made someone look away off of our smoke. That small advantage that we created is only going to last for so long. So your Wraith, Pathfinder, or your Octane uses their abilities to get the whole team into that fight and play off of that very small advantage that that previous player created for you. This player or the legend on your team is going to be the most optimal at letting the team be able to capitalize off of whatever you've done. And the last legend is your Recoverer. You will oftentimes throughout your fights and definitely throughout your matches need the chance or the ability to just slow the fight down, rest, and be able to rest in very intense situations. And if you can't consistently recover, you can't consistently clutch up when the fights start going horribly wrong. Your Recoverer is going to be a legend whose abilities let you either step away from the threat, making them less of an issue since they can't reach you, or it will be a legend that can significantly slow down the pace of a fight and slow down other teams from being able to do what they want to do, attack you. A really good common example of this is you're getting thirded, and if you stay where you are, you're going to 100% get knocked. That team is going to push, they're going to swing, and they're going to lock you into a fight that you do not want to be forced into. So your Recoverer, maybe a Wraith, creates a portal that will remove you and the entire team from that very bad fight. Or another scenario could be maybe you go for a more defensive route. You have a caustic that gasses up the entire area, making it very difficult for the team to push up onto you, giving you a little bit more time to recover before you have to take this gunfight. Now, the class of the legend that you play, like skirmish, assault, defense, recon, or the specific legend that you play does not matter at all. I tell people all the time, your legend does not matter. The only thing that matters is understanding how you're going to have to play that legend depending on the scenarios that you're in or the scenarios that you're trying to create for you and your team. So if you want to use an unoptimal legend for the role that you're trying to fill, that's totally fine as long as you understand your limitations. I play Wraith all the time as a setter upper. I will portal into a fight, create a massive break or a knock, portal back, and that sets my team up to push. My teammates follow through. As we're doing everything, we recover off the portal. Like, there are so many ways that you can play different legends in different roles. The only thing that matters is that you understand the role that you're trying to fill, and then you go out of your way to do it. But what if you're just a solo? What should you play? You should always play a legend that you are comfortable either setting your team up to make plays, or at the very least, you're able to help your team move around with their positioning. When you're solo queuing, you cannot rely on your teammates being consistent, and you cannot rely on your teammates making the right calls or the right plays. You don't know how good they are, how consistent they are, and how willing they are to do the things that they need to do. So playing a legend who is in charge, or maybe not in charge of, but is good at the very least, doing those very important things like making plays or getting yourself into a position to be able to make plays is so important. If you opt to play a legend whose role is to support when you solo queue, now you're putting 100% of the plays that need to be made in the hands of your random teammates, and you have zero control if he actually sets you up for the right things or not. So if you've ever heard that the best defense is an even better offense, this is especially true in solo queuing. You need to be the person on your team who is setting your team up to do what they need to do. So in solo queue, I always suggest that you are either playing skirmish or assault legends, unless you have another legend in mind that is really good at setting your team up to make plays, or at the very least moving your team around from position to position. And speaking of playing with your team, this is going to lead us into tip number 6. Do not ever play on top of your teammates. This is definitely the number one thing that I see people misunderstand, especially when they are solo queuing rank. Playing with your team is completely different than playing on top of them. For the most part, you should always be close enough to your team to where you can help them if they were to get pushed or if you were to get pushed. If you're way off in the distance, you're oftentimes unable to easily support your team. But this is completely different than playing on top of them. When you play on top of your team, you're typically holding the same angles as your teammates, the same piece of cover and the same line of sights as your teammates. And you're typically limiting yourself and thus limiting the consistency at being able to see or to be able to do as much as possible. If I'm holding an angle and pre-firing and dealing damage, I'm going to make that person who I'm looking at disengage from me. And because that angle is now disengaged, my teammate is holding the same angle as me, my teammate now can no longer see that thing. Because I made what I can see look away, I've effectively made what my teammate can see also look away. But when you start getting multiple angles that look at the same thing, if one person is no longer able to see something, that doesn't always mean that someone else is in the same boat. So if I'm peeking at someone in front of me and I make him look away, but my teammate is holding a different angle that still looks in the same direction, he may still be able to put pressure on that same person. So consistently having your own angle that still is close enough to your teammates is crucial, especially when you're on defense. When the roles are flipped and you're the one being pushed, holding the same angles as your teammates is usually going to instantly lose you that fight. Because once they put pressure on that one spot you 2 or 3 are peeking from, there is nothing that all 3 of you can do. You've all been forced to look away from that one spot. They only have to focus one spot. But by splitting up a little bit, if someone loses the ability to peek, then someone else can still peek from their own individual angle that's not being pressured as hard. So at the end of the day, the key here is to play near but not on top of your team. And since you're not right on top of your teammates, this lets you use tip number 7 so much easier. Tip number 7, and this is a controversial one, be a selfish team player. Now, when I say selfish, I don't necessarily mean do whatever you want whenever you want. I don't mean be an asshole. I purely mean always put yourself before your teammates. Your teammates dying is more their fault than it is yours. And trying to overcompensate for their mistakes is only going to get you killed and put into an even worse situation than you were before. An easy way to look at this is if your teammate is dead, how is you getting yourself killed going to help? By making sure that you stay alive in an unwinnable situation, you guarantee that you can try again. Now, take this step a little bit further. Being selfish also means do not rely on your team. You need to be a solo that simply contributes to the team by always making your own plays in hopes that it creates an opportunity for yourself to play off of. It also creates opportunities for your team to play off of. So if I'm playing Wraith, I'm not going to wait for my team to make a play in order for me to go push. I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to make my own smart, safe play. That would give me my own advantage and thus gives my team an advantage to play off of. I see so many solos or even rank groups who overcomplicate playing as a team. They do literally every single thing together, and then when the person that they rely on for everything isn't able to do that something, they just completely come to a stalemate. They do nothing. By always doing your own thing, you are always contributing and supporting your team. Just don't get this mixed up with running off on your own and trying to 1v3 every single fight. You have to make safe, smart plays that lead to you being able to capitalize off of it personally, and thus your team will be able to capitalize off of it. When I'm playing Wraith or Horizon or Pathfinder, these legends are typically really good at getting their own one-off angles. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play as a selfish solo, get my own one-off angle, and by creating a break that I myself would be happy to go play off of, it creates opportunities for my teammates. Selfish players work as a team. Tip number 8, prioritize your placement over your kills. Too many people will go for kills thinking that it will lead to them getting better placement. But in reality, when you instead focus all your attention onto what is going to get us better placement, like focusing on your loot, your positioning, focusing on avoiding third parties in high traffic areas, etc., 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 your kills will just naturally come with that. When I was top 500 Apex Predator versus when I was top 20 Apex Predator, my consistency in gaining RP was completely different simply because I shifted my focus. When I was forcing myself to fight everything in top 500, it put me in so many bad scenarios. I drop off a building to go for some kills and die for it. I rush into a fight just because I got a knock and die for it. I'd hear fighting in the POI next door and I would rush over, and as you can expect, I would die for it sometimes. I was fighting for the sole sake of just fighting and getting the kills. But when I shifted my focus over to the placement aspect of things, I noticed that I was dropping just as many kills and sometimes even more, simply because I was more prepared for the fights and took them a lot smarter. When you focus on placement, it sets you up for power spots, making it easier to push from, but harder to get pushed. It leaves other teams in more vulnerable situations since they didn't prepare for certain aspects of this match. So in reality, simply making sure that you have a good game will naturally lead you to easier and more consistent kills that you don't need to work as hard for. And building off of that with tip number 9, don't force a fight if you need to. Apex fights are a lot like wicked Taco Bell farts. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. When you're taking fights or you're poking at teams across the POI or you're trying to rotate into a certain direction and you're just not feeling like it's possible or it's the right move, you simply trust your gut for it. Simply trust your gut and do not force it. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a circle hole. It just does not work. So unless you absolutely need to do this one thing, just let it go and figure out something else. Because at the end of the day, it's probably not a fart. It's most likely just shit. And last but not least, tip number 10, always play for power spots. I don't care if you're pushing a team, you're rotating from one POI to the next, or you're holding a zone. Every step you take should be a power step for a power position. Getting sloppy with this is what leads you to getting put into very vulnerable situations when you're least expecting it. So when you're holding a building and a team is flying into your area, make sure to take control over the roof, because it's easier to drop down from the roof onto that team than it is to climb up to the roof and try to fight them. When you're rotating, even if it's taking an extra couple seconds, take the route that offers a little bit more cover and less open areas from cover to cover. That way, if you magically end up getting engaged, you are a little bit safer. When you're pushing a team, look for areas that offer more cover, better head glitches, more angles that look at where people are playing. The more consistently you are actively looking for these power spots, the more consistently that you will find them, and the more consistently that your matches will feel, because you're not always being put into very uncomfortable positions. Something I always see when I'm coaching is players who just play. They just hope they naturally put themselves in a good spot, but this is something that you just don't do. This is something you are always needing to be thinking about. When I'm pushing, I'm constantly thinking to myself, when I move to a position, what looks at me and what can I look at? I consider my other options. What other positions will give me more angles to look at, but block more angles from looking at me? The only way that you will get better at this is by actively thinking about it and by actively looking for it. It is such a simple thing. I know everybody right now is probably thinking, obviously I know to play a power spot, but are you constantly thinking about what are the power spots around me? What power spots can other players take against me? The more you think about this, the easier it will be and the more consistently that you will have it, making your games so much more consistent at reaching top 5, which is where you're going to get that massive bonus from.